cities dumb? I mean, we don't really think that cities are particularly dumb. I mean, not if you compare them with all other levels of government. I mean, cities are doing pretty well. I mean, you can generalize, but definitely they can do much more. They can become much smarter. In Europe, I heard some data yesterday from India. In Europe, we already have cities accounting for 75% of the European population, the GDP, the energy consumption and emissions. So we need to get smarter, if not because of these incredible numbers, which are only growing. And in India, you're getting soon to these numbers. So it is imperative to become smarter, but what does smart really mean? I mean, we heard so many different interpretations of what smart is. I mean, we heard in the last few days a lot of very interesting presentations, and smart can be a lot of stuff. I'm going to focus specifically on the smartness of city governments. One key observation I wanted to make is that you observe cities worldwide, and you see that there is huge potential, and most of the times it stays untapped. Why? For a series of reasons. Cities invariably, I tell you, I mean, it may be sound like a strong assertion, but we work with all kinds of cities in Europe and in the rest of the world. They work in silos. I was expecting this word to come up a little bit more yesterday. A couple of times somebody mentioned it. But this is really the main problem cities have, and not just cities. I would say also a lot of organizations, public and private. If you work in silos, definitely you do not unleash all the potential you have. We have to face the fact that most cities in the world now work under strained financial conditions, so they have limited staff, sometimes with limited competence also, and limited resources. So that's another big issue they have to face. There's also the fact that compared to city governments, society is much more inventive, much more innovative, and moves much faster. So cities sometimes, they have to catch up continuously with those constraints that they face. So there is an inevitable level of disconnect between this complex reality that they should govern and the ability that they have to do so. So this is a main problem. So this is also what drove us in shaping the project that I will tell you later about, Ruggedised. So facing these conditions, you miss a lot of potential synergies. You have soaring costs because everything you do as a city costs you more time and more money. It also produces lower service levels. And the result of all this is that your city struggles in progressing from a socioeconomic perspective. And also, you have city officials that are frustrated and also citizens that are frustrated. So I don't want to depict a bleak picture, but definitely I'm saying if we want to have smarter cities, you have to take into consideration a lot of these factors. So looking at this, if you want to take this perspective, then getting smarter means connecting. I said it 3 times because it really means connecting many things. Digital, infrastructural, human networks. And I emphasize a lot the last one, the human level, the personal level. This is invariably the most important thing we notice when we work and we try to assist cities. And I will give you a couple of examples later because it's mind-boggling to me to see what happens in a city where a lot of colleagues should know each other and work together, but very rarely it happens. So if you're able to connect all these different networks, you can harvest ideas, technologies, products, services, all the good things we heard about yesterday and today. And you can bring them to public fruition in a more coordinated way. And that's the last key point I wanted to raise. You do that, you have to do it in a coherent way. City governments have the duty of having a long-term, in this case, smart vision, and making sure that all of that, they connect with all of that, and they can steer it coherently towards a vision. Otherwise, you have a lot of, individual interesting initiatives, but they don't really make sense at the higher government level, which is also inefficient. In this sense, in order, cities can do a lot, as I said, to become smarter and more resilient, because, life has a lot of bumps. I mean, we are seeing it today with climate change, for instance. We were just discussing it before with somebody. And this can be done not just in the smart city domain. Smart cities is an interesting field because it integrates different urban domains, but you could get smarter pretty much in all urban domains. In Europe, the European Commission has decided to launch a program focusing on 3 smart cities areas: energy, transport, and specifically electromobility, and the digital technology sector. And this is because they can be obviously well interconnected and then can create synergies. The Commission is doing that through a program that is funding several projects. One you just heard about, the next I'm going to tell you about. There is a bunch of these programs, these projects, that experiment, share, and replicate smart city solutions. One of the ways that we found that is most effective to mend the disconnect that I talked before about is creating partnerships in each individual cities first. So when we talk about a partnership, what do we mean? We mean the municipal government and all the departments working with the mayor and with the city council, whatever is the institutional setting that you have, the relevant utilities, the industry, that huge wealth of innovative SMEs, the startups, the universities, the research centers, and importantly, civil society. So involving citizens, NGOs, and other stakeholders. And that's kind of like, we call it smart cities, smart city 101, really. If you don't start with that, you can cover some ground, but you're not going to do it coherently, as I said before, and you're not going to maximize the public utility. By doing this partnership, you foster mutual understanding because you bring these multi-stakeholder platform together, and people start knowing each other, discussing, understanding mutual needs. And they also understand the common, the vision that the city has, and they tend to own it much better than if it's imposed. It also creates, as I was just saying, a platform, a reference platform to discuss and share ideas and projects. I mean, today we heard a lot of interesting initiatives, for instance, the startup platform, yesterday something else, and those are all really commendable, but it's also important that the Commission, that the city government stays on top and steers all of this. Again, so that it can be coherent with the vision, the long-term vision. It fosters a collaborative spirit. This is, again, crucial, especially because, as I'm going to say, we work in silos, and so we tend to break silos by doing that and build connections that are often personal connections that then also survive these individual projects. They build a collaborative culture that is sustained in time. So to smarten up our cities, we need to deploy, certainly, smart infrastructures and services. We heard a lot about this in the last couple of days. But we have to use technology as the great enabler. But importantly, we need to smarten up our administrations. How do we do this? And this is a simplified presentation, but we do this really going into interdepartmental communication and cooperation. So we bring all these people together, we make them understand why it's important that they work together. We adopt specific methodologies for, it's like, we call it forward-looking visioning and planning integration, so that city authorities they look beyond today and tomorrow, which is typical of any politicians, and they take a longer perspective, and they do it in a way that it is forward-looking and it is participatory. I'll explain a little bit more later. City governments also have to be proactive in improving energy and environmental regulations and standards. That's another crucial point about smart cities. Maybe another one that was not too much discussed in the last 2 days. They have to open up to society, as I said. They have to reach out to society and leverage all the good ideas that are in the city landscape, and foster public-private partnerships, because that's the key to any major investments. Certainly in Europe, I guess also in the rest of the world. So after these, well, this I can skip. This is just to say that if we achieve that, then you achieve most of, the strategic objectives that any city wants, the most important of which is the quality of life. I mean, all cities want to have happy, healthy, and rich citizens. Okay, after this long preamble, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Ruggedised. Ruggedised takes this approach and elevates it to a transnational level. That's how we call it. So the same approach, this collaborative approach, you just don't use it in a single city, but you use it in multiple cities that work together. So this trans-border dimension can happen at interregional, transregional, transnational, or even transcontinental level. You don't really have limits, because once you embrace the approach, you can do it. Obviously, you're going to face more cultural differences. So that could be a challenge, but at the same time, it can be a richness. Because what we know is that, provided the fact, as rightfully said before, that each city is different, but it's also true that provided the unique context, and also provided the national context in which each city sits in, because that also has to be considered, then all cities are very similar. I mean, they all really share similar fundamental goals, as I said before. They have very similar challenges, some of which I highlighted before. So it just makes sense that they work together. So it's important to also break not just silos within cities, but also the single city silo. Working together makes them smarter. We know this for a fact. We've been doing this for many years. And it does it faster. It accelerates growth. Something that you can accomplish maybe in 20 years, you can do in 10 years or faster. So this kind of structured intercity programs offer all the cities that participate possibility to have an inspirational circulation of ideas. As I was saying before, you have different cultures, different approaches. You can you will find that similar problems are solved in different ways, and it can be also an inspiration. You can pull together broader groups of experts, technologies, and opportunities, and you create a peer environment. This is also an important thing. I mean, everybody likes to discuss with peers. I mean, you feel like you're validated by talking with a peer. Whether it's a policymaker, a techie, nerds as we call them sometimes, when we have these conferences and we see that some people are really just interested in the specific tiny little detail, but that's fine. That's the role. Scientists, investors, because as I was saying, it provides, working in that kind of environment, a lot of support and validation, and as I was saying also, it enhances this collaborative spirit. Now, Ruggedised, this is who we are. We have 3 lighthouse cities, as we call them. Rotterdam, which is also the coordinating city. Umeå, probably nobody here knows Umeå. It's a fast-growing city on the eastern coast of Sweden. It's a young city, a university city. And then Glasgow, everybody knows Glasgow, especially if you like Scotch. Then we have 3 following cities: Brno in the Czech Republic, Parma in Italy, and Gdansk in Poland. So the 3 lighthouse cities, as I will show you later, they deploy They have created living labs in their cities. So not the entire city is a living lab, but a specific neighborhood, which is an innovation lab, where they deploy a number of smart solutions. Everybody works in partnership, and the areas are those that you see there and that you will see better here when I just show you. I'm not going to go into the details because I don't think it's probably so interesting here, but you can see the collaboration areas. So the solutions are deployed on the smart thermal grid area with a lot of stuff like, distribution, storage, renewable energy production. 100% is what they're doing in the 3 city labs. As I was saying, electromobility and energy management and ICT. So I'll also show you another chart. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's very readable, but this only synthesizes how the solutions are integrated, because that's the important thing. Every city has a number of solutions that all come together thanks to the ICT, and they support each other and they create a more sustainable environment. Moving forward, I'd like to maybe spend a little bit more time on this slide, which shows the work that we're going to do in this project. Provided that we're going to deploy these 32 innovative projects, what we do is we are very interested in studying the innovation that comes out of these projects so that we can also transfer it to the other cities in Europe and in the world. How do we study innovation? We have created study groups, discussion groups, that talk about different fields, software, hardware, and as I was saying before, maybe the most important of them all, what we call orgware. So all those enabling factors that allow software and hardware to work properly. So governance, standards, business models, partnerships, regulation. And so over time, we will work with these groups and we will distill the most innovative aspects of the work that is done in the 3 lighthouse cities. At the same time, we will evaluate what we are doing. So in terms of impacts, just like the previous gentleman said, so how is this impacting our cities in terms of environment, society, energy, and economy? We're going to also check that our business models are solid and viable, bankable, as was said before. And then we're going to also evaluate our instruments for fostering cooperation and see how effective they were. If they were not, how they could be improved. And then, this is a very interesting aspect that was mentioned today, I think. Also, because smart cities are only going to work if they are sustained in the long term. If you just have a nice living lab, a pilot project that gets the money of, in this case, the commission, and then, after the project, it just falls down, that's not going to do a lot. So we're going to study whether these business models and all that we're doing are tenable on the long term, that can be scaled up in our cities, and create a market for smart city solutions. All of that will actually flow into this crucial aspect of replication, because what we do in our lighthouse cities, we want other cities to learn from, study, observe, and replicate. And so we're going to do that with a lot of capacity building. We're going to help the cities in the replication stream of action do the participatory visioning that I was telling you before, which is very interesting because you create a governance, and together with this governance of multiple stakeholders, you imagine your city of the future. And then once you have that and you have seen the different alternative scenarios and you have picked the one that is most suitable to your needs and you establish your vision, you have the governance, as I said, that will pursue that vision, and then they create an action plan to actually deploy smart solutions to go towards that vision. We also, attached to this replication part, there is also a city interest group that we are creating. There is already Mumbai. Mumbai was already included in this group at the outset of the project, actually in proposal phase. I'm here today, obviously, to tell you that if any other cities are interested, it would be nice maybe for you to consider joining that interest group. It doesn't provide financial resources, but it provides a lot of knowledge that we will be producing in course. All of this and all of that hopefully contributes, together with all the other European projects that work with us, to create a larger, cheaper, more accessible smart city market, because that's really the objective. Now, just 2 more slides and then I'll leave you. Can we help? Well, I haven't told you who we are. I left it for the end. Because we work in this project, but I work for a research institute, which is based in Rome, in Italy. That's the one. That's the picture where we are, right at the center. If you have ever been to Rome, it's near Spanish Steps, so right in the center. It's a pretty old institute. It was established in '71. What we do is we support high-level international institutions like the European Commission or the European Parliament, national governments and local authorities in sustainable policy analysis, policy making and policy evaluation. We do a lot of studies in innovation, scenario making, and internationalization. That's a complicated word in these fields. We have worked, as I was telling you before, that we have quite some experience in more than 100 of these transnational projects in the last 15 years. And we have promoted a lot of them. We have coordinated a lot of them, a lot of intercity programs. And then, yeah, what we can do is pretty much all the things that you have seen, we can assist with those. So we can assist setting up intercity smart programs. It helps define a strategic smart vision with participation from local stakeholders. There are different methods to start and run a smart city governance, which is key. Well, we do a lot of evaluation and monitoring of the results. And, you know, we can also act as conduits with cities in Europe and in the world, especially also in the US and in China. And we can also be a conduit for the research work. In Europe, we work